Chodan Temung Mudu Zedosu Panden Zawe Lama Rinpo Taso Ningara Bemen Densho La Kari Chenbu Changju Ningbu Ba Denpa Yu Masan Jume Shera Pari Maje Manga Namge Wo So so ra re yi je ju yu wa du so je sa ze lo de yan ta ga de ba sang ga de bo de ye so ha de yan ta ga de ba ra bo de ye so ha de ya ta ga de ba ra san bo de ye so ha ge re tong da ja jo shi ne da shi de ne jo yo so shi be jo I would like to remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it bodhicitta motivation, or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta, altruistic motivation, we should participate in this Bodhisattva's discourse on the perfection of samadhi or concentration. So we have been discussing or talking about the need to reflect on the faults or disadvantages of attachment and hatred, in Tibetan called chakdang. And so that we are able to counteract them and apply different types of antidotes to counteract them. So that really basically constitute what we call the practice of abandonment and cultivation, in Tibetan called lang thor, something that you should cultivate or adopt, lang, and something that we should get rid of, abandon. And so one of the things that we talked about to deal with attachment is that we should reflect on the impermanence or the transitoriness or the ephemeralness of life and things, and so that should help us to deal with attachment. So as Krishna read from the extensive commentary and explained, so this brings us back to what we already talked about last week, stanza number 30 on page 106. and it reads the stanza, then because of its odor or the smell, even the foxes will come, not even the foxes will come close to this body of mine, for this is what will become of it. So we talked about this, right? The point we are dealing with is how to, get rid of attachment to one's own body, right? We have so much attachment to this body, and we cherish it out of attachment, and so we need to deal with that attachment to the body. And the one way to deal with that is, eventually, what this body will become of, isn't it? So once we die, so this body will be, let's say, it goes to the cremation ground or the cemetery, and so usually, there are certain animals feed on our dead bodies, such as foxes and vultures. But when a dead body remains for a certain number of days, it started to smell, right? Create foul smell. Even the foxes and vultures who normally feed on our body, they do not dare to come close by. Okay? So that's the nature of our body. As much as, as we are breathing, we think this body, right, as if it's never going to decay, but its real nature is in that, because we cannot think that other people will die and their bodies will rot, but not me, as if my body is going to live forever. No. Our body and anybody else's body is of the same nature. Okay? It's the nature of impermanence. Eventually it will decay. It will get dismantled. And so when it is there on the cemetery, right, that it started to create a foul smell, and even the vultures and foxes, they do not want to close by. Okay? So that's what it eventually will become. So looking from that point of view, is there really a point of getting too much attached to this body, right? So this is how we reflect on and deal with attachment to one's own body. Okay.
Shartse segu tongdi nyene tsoye cher gyube wadang jezang da shagu sabas do mindaba minjua tetabu ne do meza jede ringbo medaba nyang du se tuje yoro rude songba se gomane lu maison il a chez moi. Toujours quand tu as nazi de déguisé je quand ça lu maison sem da me quand je da me ba ene quand sem da ba je da me ba soit donc so chi comme ya je dis comme ya da lu maison c'est comme ya télé qui là c'est ça ne c'est da puis moi c'est shukshabo nyevato nya tondala ene toujours chede aujourd'hui de usachine ene pe so nyamnyungjo shele ene gonguri si odise wata.
So as Geshe explained, for us to be able to deal with attachment to this body, one's own body, so we have to reflect on its, so to speak, true nature, right? What is it made of, and what will it eventually become of, So when we know that eventually when we die, so our body becomes a dead body, right? So the dead bodies that we see in the cemetery and the bodies that we have are all the same nature, right? They're not different kind. It's not like other people's bodies are, decaying and kind of becoming stinky, and not mine. It's just the same nature. Yeah. So if we are not, so to speak, convinced it, it's even recommended that we should go to the cemeteries. Of course, in this context, we're talking in ancient India and probably today even, right? Go to the cemeteries, look at the dead bodies there, which have been cared for, different number of days and see what has they become of. You know, they have started to change color, they started to become bluish, they started to sting more, you know, and all of these things are happening, and then we look at our own body, eventually that's where it's going to be, okay? There is no doubt about that, you know. And so that should help us to be able to, how should I say, you know, deal with our attachment to the body. Okay, footnote, we're not saying don't take care of the body. Okay, that's the wrong message. We're saying don't get attached to it obsessively. And so as often, you know, as Geshe explained, that some of the practices that we are, you know, reminded of is that we should think about the impermanence of the body, right? It changes, it decays, and eventually that's what it will become. Impermanence of the mind. Our mind, you know, it just changes every moment, right? It doesn't necessarily sit, you know, still. And the selflessness nature of everything, okay? And then the feelings that we experience are, generally speaking, are in the nature of suffering, isn't it? When we say, I'm not feeling good, right? That feeling is a suffering, you know? So feelings are usually in the nature of suffering. Our body is in the nature of impermanence, it will decay. And so at one point of time, it will become a dead body, it will smell, it will get dismantled, and so get real, so to speak, okay? And then start to learn about it and deal with attachment to the body.
What is the next something go this because love to say the Tenzin Dorjee ma song xia of the Dharma song xia the remote mama do Shani lo Shartse lo ma sa the part the road the talk on the Rio Marabata so do na Yabo Yorova Cheta so that the Lude the road in big change of Jiba songs and the today Rahil Mande songs Tenzin Golum Shin Gomuris. Who did the Gomda was on time the Gom de Yara. So she's done Yevanis.
So it is stated in the commentary that Shiksha Samokcha, or compendium of Bodhisattva trainings, has been cited, and within it, you know, a sutra has been cited, a sutra that describes the what are called the stages through which the dead body goes through, isn't it? Maybe in the beginning is a fresh dead body, so it looks not too bad, isn't it? Keep for a day, it'll change color. Keep for 2 days, what happens? So it talks about day 1, day 2, day 4, day 5, keeps going, and then the longer we keep it, you know, it started to decay more, it started to smell more, the colors changes and everything like that, okay? So that's the nature of our body. So what we are trying to do here as our practice is we are trying to equalize this body which we have so much attached to, that what it will become of eventually in the future, right? So when we look at these two things, then it really helps us to be more realistic and, you know, deal with our attachment to the body, isn't it? Because eventually that's our body. It's not that body doesn't have that nature. Only when we become die that it becomes something. Our body is in that impermanent nature, decaying nature. That is the reality of the body, you know. And so we should open our eyes to that reality and use it to be able to equalize this breathing body and the dead body that it will become and decay, so that by equalizing these two things that we are able to deal with our attachment to the body.
동북권은 되게 지어마로 동북 소들리나게 들어가가 타나리마도 제여마 셔서고 동북권이 배가 루디아도 르르르시 동북권이 마루베 타나베디아 신이 르르여메다 누구의 후보세다가 르직바 주야 직바 지직바 남주들가 직바 도어라 셔서 이 거기 배가 다다 야고 윤객배 나사베 내가 루이테다 시상이 루이세들아야 샤보 모모 소마서 디레 주와도 케와시 디레 케와지가 그 Gaga chico chi yo yare ma je khaji me yo de yo ma se ti so sa da khaji lu lo sa ni ko daja ba mo da di hia ko ma yo ma ta daja to na sa ma ji ni shi go ro se da di de me du sa ni en lu me ta wa se go ya khaza o ti se lu me zo.
So as Geshe continues to explain, based on the commentary, that right now our bodies are not dead bodies, isn't it? So if we want to be more convinced about what we're talking about, the decaying nature of our body, then visit, go to the cemeteries where dead bodies are, there. So when we look at those dead bodies, right, what is happening with the dead body is not due to some random principle, isn't it? Some bodies tend to become bluish and decay, other bodies tend to be just keep fine and fresh. No such thing. The randomness is not the reason here, because our very body, what we call, this is the dukkha in the nature of suffering, isn't it? This is skandha, aggregate of suffering that we have. That's why even if we don't want to become sick, we do get sick. Why? Because it's in that nature. And Geshe didn't say that, my foot. Even if we don't want to get old, body gets old. It's in that nature. Eventually, body will become dead body. It will become a foul-smelling body. It will become a rotten body. That's the nature. And so we should take that into account and say that, okay, as long as I remain in samsara and keep on obtaining this kind of body, this is what I have to go through all the time, isn't it? It's not such thing as some people will go through that, other people don't. We are all same. All human bodies, all bodies of samsara are in the nature of dukkha, suffering, in the nature of decay, impermanence, So if you really don't want to deal with that forever, then we have to seek the enlightenment. Once you become arahat, destroyer, right, or attain the state of nirvana, then you don't have to worry about dying. Okay, all these things we are talking about. So that becomes irrelevant to you or to us. Once you become a Buddha, enlightened beings never die, so they don't have to deal with all this, stuff we are dealing with. Other than that, as long as we have not attained nirvana or arhatship and enlightenment, this is our storyline,
What they go to that, or their family, the government, Yamsling Rista, Shazang Johnshire, John then Papa, so any question of Pakaya, she did, then Papa Yamsling, Yamsabana, Karsa, in the den of Panta Yamara, Karsa, Tisera, Juju Koyoro, Karsa, looking at that Java chas, said the chicken troops, Major Lavas, you never tell figures, Laura. Says the man said, remember then, and the man son, Naza Togo, Naza Naza del Main, the pink, did know this, the teacher, you paid all your marriage. Carson, Katuka, the Laneta, and Gonguris, Lara, Timina, and pay me, Shunto, washing, and Taran, Diggers, do myself. Remember Kevakazina, me, Jen, Naza Pengo, Mother. Me myself another fair one. What did you take your chicken drops here? I said, oh, the here, I did the Yamslog, I did that thing called regret to where maybe she could say, I did have Kaimara, and the Kagawa songs. I did. She said, I'm going to sugar is what is your time.
So what we are trying to do, there's a number of steps here, right? First thing is we called try to establish the facts about our body, isn't it? We just try to be honest, like what will our become body eventually? It will become a dead body, and if you keep for a number of days, it started to change in so many yucky ways, but these are the facts we have to establish first, isn't it? Yeah. And so we don't have to visualize or imagine this, because this will eventually what our body will become of. Once we establish the truth, the realities about body in this particular context, now the purpose of establishing realities of the body is so that we will reflect on them, then we'll try to bring them into practice and bring some changes within ourselves. That's the whole purpose, isn't it? The purpose of establishing realities of the body is not for the sake of information collection. Okay, that's not what it is. Simply knowing about those things and then never reflect on it and bring into meditation practice, it doesn't serve any purpose. Does that make sense? So the steps we have is establish the realities. Why? Reflect on them, meditate on them. Why? Bring the transformation changes, change your perspective, grow spiritually. That's how it is all connected, isn't it? So as it is somewhere else in this guide of the Bodhisattva stated, and Geshe very beautifully quoted from his memory, which says that the example given is that, let's say you have developed expertise about medicine, treatment, you know so much about it. But when you get sick, you need all the treatment, and then you never take the treatment, you never take the medicine. What is good is your expertise? It's just a big mouth. You have too much to talk about. You know so much, but then it's just intellectual stuff. Are you with me? Okay. So if somebody has medical knowledge, should know how to use it so that at the time of the need, it can help solve your health problems. If you know so much information collection and you know stuff, but then when you need it, it's just fiasco. With me. So in the same way here, as we deal with these issues, we are not here to collect information about Dharma information, right? Build up the whole store of knowledge. And then, okay, so what? Like disconnected from the whole teaching. Like, okay, yeah, I know. It will become, yeah, I know. Yeah. That's not going to, not I know. Really, does it affect you effectively, so to speak, in the gut level, and so that we are able to connect the theory with the practice and bring the necessary perspective changing and the spiritual growth within ourselves. So that's why we are discussing these matters.
What is good? Ya kang se turo dis pora number soba mezo jinga to na so da jingru de sha de cha da ra zhi sha ba se qu ju cheng zhi sha ba to na so tong de so da xian ya kang ge se turo na jingru su ju ba sha da da yo da qu ju me ba to na第六的学校那时候，我们现在有些送把大我是，我带他六百六家去这听我这个，别健身的时候考门的的六家人些，你看现在别大香港那边现在如果搞不搞这些，更是这下站面更是别日本人这些咱家的时候就了，我第时候我听这个好像，现在的那六个年当什么的那。심주로 시비이나 애니 류를 잡아도 저거라 류드베 딱된로 야고지는 걸 잡아게 쇼라 시다 거베 딱된시 걸 로디 그야도 매베 그 정도에 가가 통선 애니 걸 로디 시마르바 시다 류를 야 잡아도 그리시 어디서 왔다 류를 잡아야지 그 류에서 제보저지다 디데지 로디시는 거 잡아지거라 그 정도에 이 공무도 디데지 삼노 거나 in call Shabbat Marva, she don't limit on Gumga,
So as Krishna explained, the reason why we are attached to our own body is because we see our body as if it is a permanent entity, isn't it? It's just going to be like forever, some down level, right? We have a feeling this is going to be my body forever. And then we always see it in a very positive way. My body is so beautiful. Geshe didn't say that sexy. I added that one. So I'm handsome. I'm just pretty, whatever. My body is. And so when we think that way, obviously these thoughts will generate attachment to the body, isn't it? So in order to deal with attachment to the body, so we have to think other ways. We have to reflect on the demerits or the disadvantages of the body. What is its true nature, as we just talked about? Eventually, it becomes a dead body, and it will be on the cemetery. And if you don't believe that, just go and visit cemeteries, it says, and then you will find all kinds of bodies there, isn't it? Yeah, fresh bodies, looks fine right now. Smelling bodies here, bodies that have no flesh at all. They're just mere skeletons, isn't it? because the flesh have already been eaten or worn out, whatever it is. So all these things are the realities about the body. We are trying to establish it, and our own body will be that. We don't have a doubt about that. That's what it is, So when we consider such nature of the body, realities, then we started to say, okay, this body is not going to be like this forever, just like I thought or I wish to be, isn't it? Because one day it will decay and it will become all of those things, And so I have to let go of this body, and so this will help us to be able to deal with our attachment to the body.
我这年轻的小伙伴们呢，咸阳安巴拉是没这位是就年轻的，没这位这位是西巴巴下来的，你俺们这是这菜样，咱西说的，做什么面包，然后你是几乎用就完了，这都不绿的，当过让咱很久的这边。下次这边说他讲，他现在写的说是结晶，这样教育呢，他们的这面节来说也安的模型，这边你们做说，早现在等说是结的，这样教但是没些，没些。第二个当牛就是，这玩意儿些吧我，一些吧我养，这旅行，养这旅行，多一天呢，咱现在这样，没这个，没这些是对吧我说，你让旅行没得把下没人呢。没得别，咱现在特别讲下没人办，没人写让旅讲，没得别下没人呢，没得别咱现那特别就下没人写，对那，马上把俺们找人写电脑说的，他我的，别旅所的，别知道的。旅的龙舟你要的现在坐车的旅的上面写个什么？旅的上面那龙舟上面是吧？旅的龙舟可是那东坡呀去了是吧？龙舟的旅东头嘛是吧？现在的上面写就是，但这样年轻的上呢，他不教的说就会不教嘛，让把水要嘛，现在咱是就这个意思。现在年轻的多样人嘛都是。在别差这个没都是，他看见，说是下班就是他们说是旅的龙舟下些，你把的人说是旁边边了，像夜些下的你用过了，他学下着的，现在上班用的有什么的，现在第一个难的，他们说是旅的下班的来，旅没早的，推这个旅的过程下的些，他的。就说呢，因为把这么的，但是被那是公家中的这个人的现在，让旁边这个地刚刚地下的时候，这个嘛是下去了，我的说，我的下没这把的，现在他们今天说就我讲是，现在就我新这种什么的，旁边人家都是用样面子，你靠啥呀嘛是，现在旁边的这种人把的，公家看见。所旅的下面是龙舟下面是，年轻下面是我第一个这个和中国上的，开始直到程度落点呢，咱们讲说两个人是这意思的。
So Geshe-la's reading of the commentary and explanation pertains to stanzas 31 and 32 on page 106 at the bottom, and they read. Although this body arose as one thing, the bones and flesh with which it was created will break up and separate. How much more so will friends and others? At birth I was born alone, and at death too I shall die alone. as this pain cannot be shared by others, what use are the obstacle-making friends? So it relates to these two stanzas. And so as Geshe explained, of course, we have all kinds of attachment to almost everything, but we are talking about some of the major issues we have, right? We have attachment to wealth and resources, possessions, right? Don't we? We have attachment to the body of ours. We have attachment to our friends and families and dear and near ones, right? These are the major attachments we have. And then we are attached to all of zillion things here, okay? But when we compare our attachment to the wealth and resources and the body, I think our attachment to the body is much stronger, isn't it? I mean, resources, sometimes we use it to take care of the body, isn't it? We can sacrifice possessions and material things for the sake of the body, but body attachment is very strong, isn't it? And so that's why we talked about the need to establish the realities of the body, what it will eventually become, okay? And so from that perspective, we try to change our perspective that I should be reasonable, right? I love, cherish this body, but getting attached to it's going to be painful because eventually that's what it's going to be. So we deal with attachment to the body. Now the next one is, remember we have been talking about the benefits of being in solitude, right? And if we can go into solitude, of course we can do much better practice with less disturbances, all of those things. And so here bodhisattvas, they'll think about the benefits of being in solitude or Wenpa in Tibetan. And so when we think about that, then this attachment to the family and the relatives pop up, isn't it? Yeah, but you know, my family and I can't live there, you know. Yeah, I know solitude is great for practice, but my family and friends, right? So we have that attachment to friends and families and dear ones. So how do we deal with that attachment, right? That's what we're talking about next here. So as the stanzas have highlighted, that every one of us, when we came into this world, pretty much we came alone, isn't it? Nobody came with us. And eventually, when we die, nobody is going to go with us. We will go alone, right? In the beginning, we were alone, loners, if you want to call them. At the end, we will be loners. We will die alone. Nobody can go with us. And so that is the fact of our life, you know. And in between, you know, we have friends, relatives, right? It's like a transitory thing. But beginning and end, nobody was with us. And so think about that. So nobody can go with us. Nobody came with us. And so we have to, how should I say, prepare ourselves to be able to stand on our own feet, so to speak, if you will. So this body, you know, which seems like one entity, when it came with flesh and bones all intact, isn't it? But when we die, even the flesh and bones, they get separated, isn't it? That which came with the body. What need is there to say that we will be separated from our friends and relatives? Nobody came with us, right? We just kind of become families temporarily. And so if our own body, flesh and bone cannot go with us, they get dismantled and separated, what need is there to say that whether we like it or not, we will be going alone and separated from our friends and relatives, you know? They can't do anything with us or for us. Yeah? And so when we establish those realities and reflect on them, then it really helps us to be able to manage or deal with our attachment to the dear and near ones.
我这是个啥？内容里就没得别些，下面那没得别咋些了？第二是下面的些点呢，他能得到的马上把一般人所些讲点东西，对他，这个个啥？年轻下面的话，他有的个是，所有女下是不没多少，女的偏多也没有些，年轻的所有女是呢。 所有女的娘样吧，他们都说些，今天年轻些，今天长些的吧，人把这些，所有什么年轻的，所有个女的吧，也是差娘样吧。我这里差没人呢，因为这了大人嘛，比他们比较是年轻的都是也把的差这个嘛是，光说这话像我一样，我这了个老弟这些呢，个不给，他说老弟些呢，偏到那个这话要嘛是吧，现在。 소소 가서 류에랑 배 대니 몸에 로디 주사 밀나 아니 니실로 로디 주사 메베데 타체 자리스 소소 저와들 바 장릉의 요이자 아니 되게 배도요 말이스 제가 류를 예쁘게 동야고 통서는 아니 니실 샤바고야 돼 레라 요리스 그러더니
So if we look very deeply, who is dearest to oneself? Self, isn't it? Number one is I. Well, number two, my family and friends, right? They come second, they are not the first, okay? Number one, I am the most important one, okay? My body is the best body. Okay? So we have so much attachment to that. That's why we have to talk about the realities of the body and how to deal with attachment to the body. But if we succeed there, then relatively it becomes easier for us to be able to deal with attachment to the family and friends. Because however close they are not the dearest to us, right? I'm dearest to myself. So if I can, my body that has been with me from the day one cannot go with me at the end, and I have to leave that behind, then what need is there to say that anybody else, however dear they are to me, families and friends, they cannot go with me, isn't it? And so we can understand that, and we can relate to that much better. And the reason is, as we know, however much we cherish this body, eventually when we die, the body cannot save us. The body cannot go with us. The body itself fails, itself decays, itself becomes nothing with me. Okay? So because of that, we said, get real. Don't get too much attached to the body, because that is the reality. It will eventually happen, and be prepared, so you will be much better. If that's true of my body that came with me from day one, isn't it? And it cannot go with me eventually, and how much more true it is with my family and friends. At the time of the death, nobody can substitute one's own death. Nobody can do anything. Nobody can save us. Okay? So we have to be separated. We have to say goodbye. That is the fact of life. We don't have to visualize and imagine, is that going to happen? Let's do some imagination. No. That's a fact. Okay? So when we think about these things, then it really helps us to have a different perspective on our relationship, and so we can deal with attachment to each other.
Young gay Luke this Roman sit there those $10 that the Condis. Da Shindu Pumbe Lunde, Shive, Dune, Zayi Shindu for Henry gave Sharu Ninja Je Ame da Nijibu Chamni Lejang Condi Jejurna, Tia Luigi Shene, Digba Digmish Sheda, Kanike, Chung Lejang, Shida Kini, Changwana. Geda diva madoba joa tamji shirlone madoba joa tamji shirlone ne ngayan chuji mendawa cheban zuela ligwa chu so so da teleya doli di da ani pa ya she de zashi Zashi Senator Zawashasona, and the Koshajo, the Yanjasi, Davoja, Rasha, Yama, the charge sounded in the Kwachana, Yanko, some Davoja, Jarawa. She said, Zamashasona, Zajo, the Yanjasi, Swamesa, Zawasha, she was a sort of features and Jarius, or Timija. The Yahin, pores. Lizzie gave Sherry a chess. So Tongwa the Jolly, the shadow by Jolly, or Tedaka Chester, that's symptom of Lumara. I made the easy champion, yes. The Ganga Batoni, so Joe Jowish. Leja and County Jekunus, that lake Cadre sign, Jekin, Tia Ludi Sheni, Dig Meshas, 그래서 다 시주도사 에네 베게 다나디 소도 샤장도 가서 소데 여아데 게베게 데모도 현다 가야 지스 mentor 인자 엔테라 야 샤장시니 그게 가서 당지도 시야요 말이시고 디미자 셰다 까니게 정원 정일래장 시다게는 장반나 게다 디바마도바 조아탐지 실로네 가 최제면은 체먼저 리버 제소세 까니게 그다 좋아세 디나네 디스고다 시다게는 장반나시 시주디스고로 게다 디바마도바시도 이 체라들 가리에서 소소 깊게 레기 사회도 가르사이는 어디냐도 용거도 신 니지 주자라 가야지 정도 용하지요 말이지 어다 레 가르사네 디 레게디 디브가든 디냐도 용거도 현다자는 용거 말이 세다 딜야 샤신시 니다 제설이야 류룽조 샤신시 말이지 어디 있으리
So a sutra and a letter to Kanishka have been cited in the extended commentary to substantiate the points that we have already talked about. And so as Geshe explained, in a sutra, that when we die, even this, the flesh and the skeletons which constituted our body will be dismantled, and even they cannot go along with us, and forget about anybody else, right? Going with us at the time, and so the death is, metaphorically speaking, like breaking a clay pot, isn't it? If a clay pot is broken into pieces, don't try to piece them together; it will never work. That's it, right? If it's an iron one, maybe you can do something, I don't know, pot, right? It's a clay pot. If it breaks, it breaks. You cannot put the pieces together. So like that, once we die, there's nothing that will bring us back into life. And if our own body, skeleton, and flesh cannot go with us, then forget about anybody else, family and friends, or X, Y, Z. Nobody can do that. So don't get attached to each other, because that's not helpful there. In a letter to the Kanishka, Kaniketingi, as Geshe explained, it says when the Lord of the Death, Yama, invites you, come to me, my dear. And so that time, nobody can accompany us or you or me. The only thing that goes along with us, right, at death and after death, is whatever positive and negative karmas that we have accumulated on our mind, isn't it? So those karmas can only go with us. The rest of the things will have to be left behind. Body, flesh, skeleton, family, friends, dear ones, near ones, X, Y, Z, everybody, okay, has to stay behind.
제소세 현자시라 샤메리비 수 유제라 누가니 조미시 배 샤메리바니 자시다니 되기를 함도 줘봐도 동에 투모디 그래 소임비 대단한 제미고 에머 문제냐나 야나 대단 레지 레지 내장 대단 샤미리데 강세나 더모 강디 제베 세나 자시소지 좋았어야 메라 라지비니 자줄 심 타치에 되나요 디니 직부를 시로 좋았어야 메라 다다랑게 나자 지금 소지 누가 나서 뇨암 랑다 니드다 소 셰디 딕바망보 사베스 나미디 누가타 이미데 저번 뇨안 나야 티케와테 고게 샤게자시니 히니 소제세 밀레싱 쿠르미 쿠여 줘 미시나 미시나 예수 저바라 죽베 갱바시 시베 니시 자에세 시기샤데스 지지샤데 구주바 중세자 메베스 시리 샤비르소 냥드세 샤베니 미예라 셰바오스 어디서야 다디 유저들이야 그 자시도서 기도로 가서 냥도 그 누가 누로다 아직 내가 주로 냥도 용거스 배도 말이지 당부제도 소지워지야지 자시서 그거 깨서 조종자지 뭐 당부제지 얘기지 말아 세자 코시도도 소소 레게디 뭐든 자시도 배 누가 냥도 누로시고 말이 가까이시고 펜타지야 말이지 세자 디소다 소소지오기 어다 등에 셔버가지 용은 들어야 자실을 거셔야 지어요 말이지 가가 소도 용하리면 파지야 메자 세자 자시 페토 말이지 차리고 말이지 어디래야
So Geshe-la's explanation pertains to stanza 32, where it reads that when we came into this world, we came alone, and when we say goodbye, eventually we will go alone. Nobody can go with us, and in between, that we have, been with together, but then for the sake of dear and near ones, we have created a lot of negativities, and this cannot be shared by them, right? Because each of us has to pay for our own karma, right? There's no such thing as sharing such experiences. And also, a lot of experiences we have are very personal, right? If I get sick, I get sick. Nobody in my family cannot share my health sickness, right? That pain is in my body, not in your body, okay? And the same is true on the other side. But on the other hand, we may have become an obstacle for each other when it comes to doing something positive in practice, like, oh no, don't go to solitude. Geshe didn't say that, right? We'll miss you or something. My footnote. So we become obstacles when it comes to doing positive things, but then we have created a lot of negativities for the sake of each other, but each of us has to pay for those karmas because those cannot be shared, right? And so such is the storyline. So however dear and near we are to each other, our relationship has been formed after our birth, isn't it? When we came alone. After birth, then in whichever family you're born, like, okay, now you have a family, isn't it? Before that, it didn't exist, right? Before our birth, family and dear ones didn't exist. After birth, then we have formed this relationship, right? Okay? And that's for the time being, as long as we are breathing. And then once we die, again, every one of us has to deal with ourselves. Yeah, they cannot, or we cannot go with them. So those are the realities of our life, and so therefore, it's much better to learn not to get attached to each other, because at the time of the need, we are alone. We have to deal with just alone.
포는 시 전国노르군장 당시 셰용 신나 우메베 능에게는 가야 요마이 대 제정 뒤 제정 당시 지구제 타마체야 당시 지구체 셰다 배지지 시발레자 제벨레지 룽주 출시증 보다 되게 정말 소화시 셰드동에 저봐 뒤드나 보다 정말 자수 줄마이 에 대다라 나도 레게 랑바시 보다 정말 다자 도와줄 다니 지구 부두 동에 용하고 대다 다게 게밀레 셰소마다로스 어디래야 돌에 다다 기월 담에 도세디나 체에서는 파마부다시 엔 포누스 비자시다시라 자시즈 체도 엔 코스 요거도 다이시에스 엔 소줄 용게 비지가 용거 말스다 동자 뭐였나 녀도 용기지야 요마로
No.
동해 길래가 미 뭐미스 동해 용으로 생게 메시 유지야 요마리스 대개경 당이 지부제 세다 기대디서 제대로 소지고 째리 녀도 째요 마리스 신도도 소지고 신도를 미 녀도야 저 녀도 해야 돼요 마리스 동해 길래가 요마이 대개의 당이 지부제 타마세 당이 지부시 해당 어때다 제가 당부제도 지고제에서 시도 시고지그래 근데 벌써 좀부터 요 수직이 능이 요 말이스 어때 매다 다 들어 샤바제요 말이야 뒤지더라 시버제 해당 세진지 시발레스라 베이징 시발입니다 지벨레 룽주 소시진 부다되지 정말 소화시 셔드등은 저와 뒤뒤나 보다 정말 자서 줄마이 제대로 나도 레지랑바시 보다 정말 다져 도와줄 다니 제부등은 요 대다 대대 다 게메레 다게 게메레 시소바다로스 어때니 제대로 지고 제대로 시도리스 제가 벌써 좀아서 사우를 가세요 얘기도 강가리네 동해 그게 뉴욕에 로바시고 말이지 소 동해도 거기서 냠도 뉴욕시고 말이지 어디서 말이 뒤에 제제다 이지고 제가 유대 티셔츠 제대로 지금 소지고 제리스 시도 소지고 제르버도 저 니셰도 냠도 들 티인저서들 요 말이지 제가 니셰 샤르 말이지 니셰데 야신데 펜을 도는다 고샤는 데가디 시대 페도요 말이지 제가 당이 지금 누구 요한주스 누구 요한주 저 대다 대대 나 켈리멜스 히에서마다로스 어디서나네 니시 벌써 좀알아서 와다 니시가 소 동해 디께와도 랭거 말이지 근데 누군지 용건조 용대게 용고세 알셔지 거기서 밖에와도 레야 되는데 거기서 동해 쇼로 그러와 시대 소라고 뉴얼도 동해 고셔자네 비 니시 제아요 말이지 시대 소다 니시 샤리 말이지 왔다.
So in the essential commentary, some sutras have been cited. One of the sutras is a sutra addressed to an Indian king, ancient. And the Buddha tells the king, "Oh, your majesty," it's like get real. I mean, he didn't say that. "Oh, your majesty, it's wonderful that right now you have your kingdom and you have prince and princess and you have queens and you have subject and everything. But the day comes when you die, nobody can go with you. Prince and princess cannot accompany you. Your queens cannot go with you. You have thousands of subjects. They cannot go with you. You are just going to be alone, right? So your majesty, think about that and learn not to be attached to your, children, your wives, and your subject, and anything else. Because at the end of your life, that's what it is going to be. You will be alone, right? You will die just by yourself, okay? And so don't get attached to things. So that's the explanation.
내가 저기서 초배에서 로봇을 잡아 샤미를 많이 뺐나 휴는 못다 되었으니 현직 돈템에 주배 로봇은 너무 되었지 세상 종강 속에서 내 지금 진정 냠주와 시바양 저의 제 유신의 현대 소소 좋았다 대신에 시바 중에 람르 못다 되었지 유신의 현대 소소 좋았다 슈베 교양 내 소소와 팀을 사베스 배 안게스 다다 린지 단다 레레 다다 레레 가zamdi rujik be nieda na ge nian so da ge ni rite ba jig de ne sen ji de so ne jiao yong sen ze ba zang de se ge pa zhe zhe ce lie jiao ge ni ri ke de xian su su zhuo xie ba li jiao ge xi tang ji de je me de so ma yi be cha mi so yang de se ni ji可下几个周末的知道啊，伊拉是吧？我是那时候被流动就你些刚刚的时候的，知道吗？我是啥啥这个看把那三年多看把中国这这个地位呢，小伙子呢，最近我投票嘛，3年那个时候做啥咔这个是吧？现在这的小伙子中国年多的我的啥的，中国都啥这个嘛是吧？这几块这些，然后这连续车去我这就。电的国家没，两头这没啥，你现在刚刚来那边个，可是你这个日本嘛，我中华这个地方那中国现在下完几万这些，但中国现在下完偏到我这啥咱们看看，说这看这个什么，说这些偏到，说咱们这个这，可多相当偏到要嘛是吧？我听那些你现在相当来。这偏到也没现在所有教这什么都是，可多地方的被东西让到牛肉些个嘛这些，可以偏到也没所有让个牛啊这些，我这是我的。
On top of page 107, stanza 33 reads, in the same way as travelers on a highway leave one place and reach another, likewise, those traveling on the path of conditioned existence leave one rebirth and reach another, unquote. So Geshe-la's explanation pertains to that stanza. So our family and friends, metaphorically speaking, are likened to like traveling companions, right, that we meet on the way, isn't it? If we are traveling to somewhere, and then we have overnight stay in a motel or a hotel or RBN, whatever. Geshe didn't say those things, right? We need a place, and we someone we're happy, we're together, we share the room. Then tomorrow, right, we go our own destination, isn't it? We're not going to get attached to each other, because there's no point of getting attached to each other, because we have different destinations, and we're happy we met situationally and temporarily, right? Just like that. We have been traveling in samsara for too long, and due to our karmic connections, our families and friends, we have situationally and temporarily, we are connected together, but it's just like we are travelers together. But then, whatever karmas that we have created, it's very personal. They cannot experience your karma, and you cannot experience their karma, so it's just like we are going to different destinations, our own, isn't it? For the time being, we are together, so we appreciate the time together. But don't get attached to. Wouldn't it be meaningless to get attached to a travel companion staying overnight together, like tomorrow, right? Because we know we just temporarily together. We share the cost, whatever, So like that, so on this path of conditioned samsaric existence, we temporarily being together due to our karmic connection and all the things. In the process, we also create a lot of good and bad karma, but this we have to pay for ourselves personally, because family and friends cannot serve each other's karma, and that's what it is. So looking at this situation, then what lesson we learn? Appreciate togetherness, but don't get attached to each other, because it just makes no sense,
我这个是有了些吧，我是养老县的。老现在的学会中不能那么对不在现在呢呢，说是不写吧，这些的，西北老的学会，被年轻说日记吧用，那破坏在连讲的，这你说用这吧的连续的。主没为是上面些切法等，养人他的学过 Rombo Shedani, Chick Bang, Chick Zimba Shevata, taking the civil love the sugar. Gaden, Chick Lang, Chick Yons Zin Sheba Yang Namu, one Jansa, Mumata Legba, Lexum Yamu, Dole, that day, Conje. Rombo Gomaji, Dongo, Nature, the social cover, social degree, Gangam de Marva, or did you what is your that? Could you need the rules, so less of the side, and they be then to the door of the Diamari, so doors. She that need Jigban, the Jig Zebashivatar, then do the Kaka doors. Taking the civil Mama the legs of Yamos, that Conje, do this on that way. Just he don't come much about those you know, showing there's a compass also door, and something do the Kaka do the shed. This or that tell a child believe nothing, and so that Nishi said, yes, you chose so travel to the mother because low they pay out the downing, but some of them are Maris or Tessie or that Conje. Because later, Shube, Lumsey Ruben, they need you upon Jenny, also the Shiba. No, once a mama that needs also degrees at these. Because it need Shedan degrees at the Mari, needs also the Bishop. Dole Casa. Dole gay. Geshe tsara tembe be nyeshina robo neju tsamde so ro she so se di kong de is dole da so ro se de geshe tsara tembe nyeshina se nyeshi shindo de dosa nyeshina se robo neju tsamde so ro se ta goma je nezaya de kama Nature keep mother, and Sonia Cardo, or just called as the Delia. There's the chair, somebody mother, Delia, Lodi Parados in Yidisha, Marcia, what did I call Nega chicken on the charging Yamdol, Kama, the Chojeriana, because the car did me, come out and do the Mara. But that's what he said.
So our situation in this conditioned existence of samsara is this, that due to certain karmic connections that we form those relationships as family and friends and relatives, but that's a very situational and temporary kind of relationship, isn't it? But another example Geshe has given is just like, all the different relatives, we decided to go on a vacation and then we book a accommodation. But again, we cannot all be fit into the same room, right? Probably we have our own rooms. But we have time together, but it's very momentary, isn't it? But at the same time, every one of us have our own individual experiences, karmas that we have to go through. Nobody can share that. And then we know we are not permanently together, so we come together and then we separate, isn't it? And so that's the storyline. We came to the world alone. We will live alone. In between, for the time being, temporarily, right, we are together. And there's no point of getting too much attached to each other, because eventually, right, none of us can be helpful to each other, right? If, let's say, we can accompany each other after the death. Maybe there is a good reason why we should really get attached to each other, right? Because we are permanent together. But there's no such thing, And so thinking about that, the metaphor of travelers together, sharing the same guest house, motel, I'm thinking about that situation. Wouldn't it be crazy to get attached to each other when you just spend only a couple of days together, right? And it's the same story same story with our dear and near ones. And so even as we are in samsara, we are not always together. We live in different houses, we live in different locations, we only meet temporarily. And so taking all of those things account, no point of getting attached to each other.
Tatanes, Nazia, Joa Rigba Damanes, Nishi Sodan, Joa Mibuba, Naz Murajan, Sirjezi Shive, Shiva Shin to do so to give on Shivena, Ranida Tar Shive, near the Troji, Zigniba Nam, Dugwa the Shive, Yang Shugi. Gune dongxing, jiu pa jiu ma jiu pu xie, xie zhe ji mian gan duan ba tang, jie xian de se, xi zi peng bu jing ge jie, ji bu xi, xie ne, chong qing ti nang ne se, me zhi te le xie lu te ne, Madik jo madompa ye ngaru tisi duni ngas jo la song la ne de jo so kang yang ane changmi xinmi ji ko ne chimara pembe shu zo ma chi shik je damba de nyangye dang je ba je nyangye da je ma ji Jive si Kuni, Yangan Dorjee by Dharma was, whatever that any Tandal Pig. So the Nishi the dream was not much dejo. Nishi and Dresha, the shit do that dread over there. Tata so Laval you did on any church, Nishi the dread now down doors. And the shit says Nishi to be. Some doing a share and then Pumbaking a mission charge to do what you do any Casa, Legat Sasa, Pento Yomaris. And Tadako Nishil Masha, any pig Carsa, Lam Yams Lambal, any Imbenius Dogoris, so these are
that. Stanza 34 reads, until the time comes for this body to be supported by the four pallbearers, while the worldly stand around stricken with grief, until then I shall retire to the forest. So Geshe's explanation pertains to the stanza. So the fact about our life includes death is certain, time of death is uncertain. At the time of the death, nobody can go with us. So these are realities, isn't it? This is not a cooked up realities. These are real realities. Okay? And so we came into this world alone. We will go alone. In between, yes, we have this, temporary connection and relationship with each other. But there's no point of getting attached to each other, because eventually none of us is helpful at the time of the death. And so before it's too late, it's better to go into solitude, right, to do a dedicated practice. And if we don't miss that opportunity, right, and now we are on a deathbed, then we can know that our friends and families will sit around and they're all like lamenting and crying and they're all grief-stricken like hell. Geshe didn't say the hell, but but they can't do anything. They can't share the experience. I'm dying, but they're pretty noisy, crying here. And that's not helpful. And then once I die, my body will be carried by the pallbearers. I don't know what we Americans call it, mortuary executives. There. And so that's what it is. So family and friends, they couldn't do anything at the time. So at that time, it's too late, isn't it? When you're on a deathbed, now it's too late to anything. So before that eventuality comes, it's better to go into solitude and prepare, for that eventuality when nobody can help us and stand by, except they can cry and grieve and yagadi, all that.
Simply said, Mengata go there, did the Chitaris. That did not the Gonja Sara Kade Gors and take the same days. You then Kavashita with the base, Ebe na to the donor. Gunjo Dines, Nikan Sonyo Lame, you the Haja meeting, Haja Mignon, I say. Nikon should tell you your member, Zaki, Temameva, Section Shua to Yevata. Nikon the Sing Puzusoba, Medo the Dibu Puzusoba, Loma Puzusoba. Jinsi Chu Meva, Pov the Deba, Minjun Deba, Demba, Taudu Meva, Donut Deva. Donut Deva, Hua Yin, so maybe near Tedawa Tana, near the She Song Xing, Dora Jang. Long they can't do driven you. Liver near this, near Sada, Sasan was the Choa Sada, near the dear Yoshi, she you did not on David. Not near the donut, do I? Tumbe na never the Shinege so Tangbo in la Tishi the Debachon, Shaw Shiva, Shaw Yons Bambata, Sidu never Navataba, Deve Nando, so Yons Bambate, Shinege. So song la Tedana Cones Conos the Shevataros. What is that? Gumza near the Kade, the categories, near stated categories, Dakaji. Della Digos soon long there. Chomba Chonsa, Hazan Batar, Bomaiba, Hazan Yamaya, stated gories. Tampa the Geshe. And then Nikon should down ye. Nobody, Chia, what you say. Timami, did I should say go is. Think today you should be and the Galicia was Yamo Tito, you was to think you Tawashi. Nikon the Himbu saw a meadow, the devil pushes over, Loma pushes over the base. Hing Joma the meadow did a young. Maybe Sakamo with the Manifesti word. Loma Puzzles of Jim. Jinser true Meba sauce, Jinser to watch Melnation de Meva. Or pulled the Deba, you know, Chogu double Kunjo, Sauji Mena, and the Chavada card did the Dieto Marva. Said that did a poke, Sagundo, Chogudo, the Red Gold is word. Masala. Pull down Deba. The Minjung the men that were made too much of that make this some ways image. Deba down. Deba down. Talk to me about Donut Devi. There were Shivani, so maybe near Tinja. Done near so she song things. What they call it? No, has a two of my no, you know, hasn't not two boy in the young dock with that. Don't you not territory much me ever share. In the subject, do you tell you ever share? Pull you ever share. In the Sioux name, it's a la share. Chill to the Gangish me share. What did that nature deal with his star? Pull you, because you subs at the town door to this, because you Charvada card upon the job to this deal with his word.
So as we talked earlier, that before it's too late, seek solitude and engage in a dedicated practice, so at the time of that eventuality, we will be much better prepared. Otherwise, when we are on a deathbed, surrounded by our friends and relatives, everybody is crying and grieving and all of that, not helpful, it's too late. There's nothing you can do, but we have to go alone. So there are a lot of benefits being in a solitude. We already talked about some before. And so what kind of a solitude we're talking about? Is it like any kind of place or not? But as Geshe explained, that these are the things we talk about in the context of cultivating shamatha or calm abiding. Right? There are certain prerequisite conditions, right? Environmental, where you go and you can do your practice well. And so going into solitude means that, of course, we want to find a peaceful nature environment, and not really very deep and dense forests. Then you get lost, right? Yes, there are trees, beautiful green trees, but maybe there are fruit trees, right? Because that can sustain you. And a clean water for drinking nearby, maybe a water spring nearby. And there is a cave where you can feel a little more protected should there be rain or snow or hailstorm coming down, because you need a shelter. And a place which is not visited by the crazy wild animals, so that you are free from the danger of wild beasts, And a place maybe not too far from the town. Should you need to go and to get some, alms begging, but not too close to the town, because not good, we know. And so such a place, right, we can find, and that can be very conducive for your practice. In this context, we also talk about cultivating single-pointed, concentration or shamatha, shamatha practice. So we will stop there today, and we welcome your questions. And yes.
The question is, since we householders are not too likely to retire to the forest, what are some useful compromise instructions for us?
Can you repeat one more time?
Sure. Because householders aren't likely to go into the forest, as was just described, what are some alternatives that might be, he calls them compromise instructions or alternate instructions for us?
Solitude, right?
Yeah, yes, sure. Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Chidu kalda Koran tiyo shio di dirisha, da nganzo de agu mina che rwa ge, chong la tegen rwa. Che da ne yamba si di shingda nang ro de di mogo di ge tsab rwa che rwa ge. Chi kagu simu da, yang chik soso nyamne le chen tuya ge rwa, dinde kwa li ya king te chik suru na su rwa ge. Shingda nang li ya be soso shi goji rwa ge. Dum hadu wina da di da tsung baru si lau marwa, nyam baru si rwa ge. Yang shamba kari yora sa ge tab she rwa ge. Be te tu baru sa marwa da. Agu mina zola rwa ge.
다 오미나이나 공자 패지자 체스죠. 네 집하고라. 네 엠바트르메나 신에 있는 조소고 말이다. 지상 지 쉬쉬 저때 네 엠바시라고 하면 고시대들을 여러. 다다들 제가 냠슬레 신에서 라실라 도게드레나 네 엠바마데는 조토야 말이지 말이다.
Chidan nyamlengi ken
다 nyamle chidan 그 신에 들게서 매지 chidan 겨드야라 인제 다 이네 엠바시라고 말이 네 엠바서 야가요데 네 엠바메나 소소 겨드 조토로
the on the desk in the sitting where Kagusubur so sharp, which is a
soso be 유지사 생리배 생파보도 고용고 대사를 좋은데 거라다 가지.
낭민님도 대변에 디고로 다게 소소 강발로가 Kagusubur나 낭민님도 대내 I'm just trying to get something out of Geshe-la's, not getting much. But Geshe-la says, of course, if we think about cultivating shamatha, mental quiescence or calm abiding, right? It doesn't matter whether you are household practitioners or you are monastic, we have to go into solitude. There is no way to cultivate shamatha, in any other way. But for our regular practice, right, we can have some quality practice. We really don't necessarily have to go to solitude. Yeah. So I said, can you explain something? So Geshe-la is not coming out that much. So I'm just trying to throw something like, okay, how about this one? How about this one? So Geshe basically says that at your home or something, if you can find a more sort of a quiet corner or a place, right, where you won't be disturbed much, maybe that is good, right, for a practice, okay, because you are not cultivating shamatha. But for cultivating shamatha, that doesn't work. For our regular practice, any nice quiet corner, place, right, backyard, Geshe didn't say that. I have to add things because not much is coming out of Geshe there. So that will work, okay.
Thank you for the teaching. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he wrote a book called How to Practice Dharma, Teachings on the 8 Worldly Dharmas.
Yeah.
And in that text, the way he uses the word solitude is he thinks of it, I think, as solitude from the 8 worldly dharmas, like mentally. And previously we talked about there's physical kind of solitude or isolation and mental isolation. So I guess I was wondering if Geshe could speak to that kind of mental solitude. If we can't get physical solitude, then maybe mentally we can kind of retreat from the 8 worldly sort of concerns. Yeah.
I need to go into solitude. This noise. Quran condition the dirisha again. Karasogore Quran gi Lama Soba Shinshe Tambe ki Dachi Chen Yamne Chedan Koller Wagen. Jignen Chegelia, Dachi Kanen Cheda, what you soon you said, what? Deb Dinale Embassy, Deshe Chi, Madame Namikan, same embassy, or Dile Shabi Sarwage, same did Namdog and Damar Chubja Tingu on my restaurant. Says that Quran Sena King, the quality, Sunga Yunas, that Ganzo. Lud embala tema dun argumentar wage in the same day wage namdo da damadan de chik enter gi dinde thor samtang da thor da remba dinde kwal king tesis kana yena sake
da jeda se da le thambo sa de karza dero lu emba mena se emba jeso shi khabo shi gorda lu emba de karza ne semi emba yunga thodar ko dor shin na de can do ro
ta lu emba chem modu na ge se emba che nyamne de jene mena
ta lu emba che mo da khang sa khang so so be chi na yin do da chi da kha phang me do de khang yung yung do xia de yo ro
de la ge wen be thanye jan de ge na ge
la da
de le sem embe thanye khong du ge
thanye da de pe so so khang sem pa phang me do ma khang 지금 저저 좀 신 도시 성당데 세메베전 로
you know my footnote Geshe is always tough. He stick to his he said it is thinking deeply is really hard to think in terms of mental isolation or isolating mind from all the crazy thoughts, right, without physical isolation or solitude, because the whole purpose of physical isolation, solitude, is to be able to facilitate, right, be conducive to the mental. Right? But I said, yeah, but we are lay people. I'm just trying to still push the thing. So is there possible that we can still do mental isolation or mental solitude, let's call it, right? And so Geshe thinks that, if, wherever we are, if we can somehow protect our mind from like say excitement, laxity, distracting thoughts, maybe that is in the direction, right, of the mental solitude, right, as much as we can, right? We don't let our mind, how should I say, perturbed too much by all the monkey crazy thoughts. Geshe didn't say the monkey one, right? But if we can somehow discipline our mind, have a little more peace of mind, like a little less excitement, laxity, whatever discipline, that goes along maybe with the practice of mental solitude. Yeah. Any other questions?
Geshe said that the body is in the nature of suffering. Can we say that the body is suffering?
Okay.
Is there a difference between being in the nature of suffering and being suffering? Yeah.
Quran condition this go get that again anzo phungbolia chapa ji yo mare phungbodi jibe chuje de phungbodi tunge roage rangshin rela roage 자자 코란 생을 딜 켜봐요서 풍부디 둥에기 랑신 레 라바다 풍부 코란 둥에 레스라와게 라바니엘이야기 켜봐요 베스 그러게
되더래.
어제 풍부디 둥에 레스라면 니그 베스 둥에기 랑신 레스라고 거기 가르쳐서 그러게
부모가 동에 레스는 지 말았지. 부모가 동에서 소화를 걸어.
노서
풍부시 듣고 소화가 말아.
노서
자, 배제 해달랍시다. 이제 풍부 될때 동에 걸어. 자,
저 둥에 랑신 레 라지다
동에랑 이사디 꼭 때지 창도 동세 다갈 때 마실 거 동에 자가 시지 차더라.
So Geshe feels why we, call like the body or the aggregate in the nature of suffering, dukkha, is because we can't say the body is a suffering because suffering is more thought in terms of feelings, isn't it? Our body is very susceptible to all kinds of those painful sufferings. So this is why instead of saying body or aggregate is suffering, we say it's in the nature of suffering.
So suffering is is feeling. It's just negative feeling. Painful feeling is suffering. Is this what it is?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking.
어, really?
That's right. Painful feeling is a suffering. Yes.
Another question about I've heard that if somebody speaking of attachment to the body, if we have strong attachment to the body at the time of death, we're likely to take a bad rebirth. Never mind being reborn in a Pure Land.
Right.
Is that the case, and why so?
Koran kin ninde ko nyung sa gen da kan da gi lui ya cha ba chi ju ba ching mang sung de ba ge yin de ko al hak ba do chi be ne ka bla ba ge so jo lui ya cha ba shi ge be na ba ge cha ba de jen jen nge song dry rest ba ge ninde cha ba ye ba ina ane de ba ching sing ba ja da le rest ge dry ma sa di ta ga ina inde kyun jen ka ri na sa
라.
시베 까블이야 류를 차고 제베 나라와게 예송을 제 이마다 대화전을 줘야 매버게 와 근데 고촌 디 줌제를 비서와 디 가리 이마나 손을었다
데데데.
할래 디데 이나 매나라와게 이나
데데 대화 이번에 그게 메가 온도 저데데네 데데 타진도 데 데저 자요 말아 데저 자래 예수만 시고 시아도 되고 거라.
So I think why we feel it's very crucial at the time of the death is in what state of mind that we kind of pass away. But if we are attached to our body, right, then our mind is in that deluded state, isn't it? So of course, with the deluded state of mind, there is no possibility to be hope to reborn in the Sukhavati or any Pure Land, and that negative state of mind is going to drag us down, right? It's going to lead to unfortunate rebirth.
Could it be, just speculating here, that if we are strongly attached to the body, then when we see that the body is disintegrating and we cannot hold on to it, this will generate anger, and the anger will precipitate the ripening of negative karma.
근데 영적으로 배서 그시 시ben 내가 소소를 류를 싫어 찾고 유나라하게 다 찾고 가서 쟤는 맞은 류도 갈로 가는 마식으로 하게 다 식으로도 갈려야다 소소 사마리 찾고 쟤면서 네게 야마란 룽랑해요 하게 공도산에 다 인데게 쟤는 되냐 지금 미게 바 페네 양에 손으로 있는데 영식으로 해서 Yeah, that's a possibility too, right? I mean, as you see that you cannot hold on to it, your body is decaying, now that kind of frustrates you and that can make you angry and yes. Any other thought? Yes.
There's another question online. She asks, regarding detachment from those we love and care about,
Yes.
is it also helpful to consider the opposite? For example, jealousy, possessive tendencies, and so on. And I asked her a clarifying question, should this be at the time of death or in general? And it sounds like maybe both, but the question's more oriented towards in general, I believe.
Oh, you mean instead of attachment, what about jealousy? Is that what you mean? Question?
Yes, should we also reflect on jealousy, possessive tendencies, and so on
Or reflect on those, right?
in our daily lives?
Sure,
yes,
yeah.
and see them as negative.
Sure.
Thank you.
Tajet on the condition that the ring under the Sunday Mansi, really chakpa kiena pendo meba da nyembo tendang da nyenda roagin di sung de roa Quran samba di chigo maimba da pena chi ngado namju chikchilia gen chakdo che la soba da dinde yorwa ge nyemo samba a dige di namju ngado kyundeng nyamla na ya dige dige nyemi ta che roage dige de ya di samurtang kwa ro ne ta cha yo ma res ku ge da chi shen dense mraboda denne chi chakdo cha de yungro wage
Today type of the Yumuko today Munamura Shezus Yomara. Can you shut down Jesse Tina that John the Yundega had the Jonga shut down to Gorova. That shut up into Chado Jado, Kodo Jado, that there's a Jad, Damrajadi Yorova. The shut down Senator Tina Daga, Yumukonga of Tina water.
You know, yes, I mean, that's possible. We need to reflect on the demerits of other delusions. The reason why, right, we don't talk about every particular delusion, they're just like too many, isn't it? But when we just deal with attachment and hatred, then I think most of other delusions are somehow affiliated to them, isn't it? Out of attachment, we can become jealous, we can become angry, we can get frustrated, right? And out of hatred, then we can do many other things. So because of that, right, these are the major delusions. So we said if we reflect on them, of course, relatedly, then we could reflect on the demerits of jealousy arising out of attachment or hatred or whatever, right? Yes, we should be doing that.
Going back to the nature of suffering, is this it being in the nature? So nature of suffering is different from suffering. That was established. But does that mean that the body, being in the nature of suffering, means that even though it may be comfortable now and not a painful feeling associated with it, but eventually it will give rise to suffering? Is this the meaning of the nature, being in the nature of suffering? Eventually it will disintegrate, it will be sick, old, and
Quran tagi condition with the day condition that tagging as a pungo de Tungagi Rangshin lab rawage. Lab quiet dependent Tandang as a pungo de get Nasatangi Yomar Kaime de Kiburusune rawage. Go to me Rangshin realize the Aneko Tame Tapshu de la pungo de Majig Rawage. And the Odi Chen to me Rangshin realize the Lagos, did you call that Sova Matabingurawage? D Chanet Pumbo. 동네 랑시를 라이디를 해서 단다 소소 수보디 대보디 기보다 흘려 유네 로하게 타면 답실로 거 딘데 대요 말와 어디 전에 동네 랑시를 라이 김전 딘데를 해서게
뭐다 되다 대 차대 저 이제 대신에 거대 타면 타시 시가요 뭐 그때 말이 차가 떠서 저 풍부디 그 셈 가지는 거 그때 지도 누가 용아 줄여야 돼요 누가 풍부서야 돼요
디 캔팅 아주 다 녀모기 데부선다 디디 디다
달리 용 집으로 되겠다
you know, I mean, ultimately, I think when we say body is in the nature of suffering, it's because this body is the result of what we call contaminated karmic actions and fleeting emotions, isn't it? And so because of this, the body at the moment is just fine. We don't have any pain, looks very comfortable, but in any little things can bring pain to it, isn't it? Right? It is very susceptible, very vulnerable to all kinds of things. But why? Because this is the product of contaminated karmic actions and delusions. That's why it is. Yeah.
It's like the body contains the potential to experience suffering.
Exactly.
You will carry it forever. Yeah, okay. Why is this? Okay, so all this in the whole this chapter deals with how to develop the motivation and to overcome the obstacles to seeking solitude and meditating. But what is the point of talking about meditating on the foulness? Let's say comparing our body to the bodies in the on the charnel ground, all that. I mean, how will that be contributing to us engaging in a solitary retreat? It seems to me that here he's talking about it's a meditation topic, meditational subject. It's not to motivate us to engage in retreat, but rather once we're in retreat, then we meditate on the foulness of the body. Isn't that?
Okay. Quran condition this word that and then lul chabe chakbe nimi komkwe da nyen zen chabe nimi mongshe rwage dige sangma kwe kita nimi ta ne komkwe de jing ne embal ya dro kwe gi cheje de shed rwage shed ngar de sa re sa rwage and when it's ne embal chin and dige de nimi kome mar be sa rwage ne embal che rwa and di na la and lu gi nimi da chakbe nimi da rwage dan di karso gore ne embal dro ya gi chedo di nimi kome di shed go rwa karso ko chumjen kwe bar sha rwage and the develop the condition of the okay.
Tiro sheda ne embal maguna da shine lakdong zoya yo marwa. Sheda tada ne embal dogre ne embal mandu na tin shine lakdong zo dugu marisi. Sanga singi jile gong ya go yong marisi. Sesa da ne embal dogre what is ora.
I think the main point is that why we need to seek solitude is ultimately we would like to succeed in cultivating shamatha, calm abiding, and then combine that with vipassana, special insight, right? This really deep realization. This cannot happen without being in a solitude. So to prepare ourselves for the solitude now we're talking about, right? In some sense, why we need to reflect on, right? If let's say attachment and body, I cannot go to solitude, then we think about that, right? The false. So I think our ultimate being the solitude is not just simply reflect on the faulty nature of the attachment to the body or relatives, but just to be able to develop concentration and develop, right, shamatha and vipassana. Yeah.
My question is how will that abandoning attachment to the body by meditating on these issues, how will that increase the likelihood that we will engage in a meditation retreat? How will that contribute? I can see how thinking about the fact that all relatives and friends are impermanent and all the negative aspects of being attached to them. This will prevent us from engaging in retreat. But attachment to the body, I don't see how that could be the case. In fact, he says in verse. He seems to say that if we want to feel protected, not fearful of the safety for the safety of the body, then we should go to retreat. So it's the opposite.
So you were saying like how the attachment of the body
will prevent us from engaging. How would they facilitate our willingness or the ability to engage in meditation retreat?
Oh, as how it prevents.
So where everything else is definitely contributes to that. Right. When we realize that attachment to relatives will prevent us from engaging in retreat, so that makes sense. But this particular thing,
the body
on the other hand, it is a object of meditation for developing Shine, right? Isn't it?
Right.
The foulness of the body.
Right. Yes, it is connected to that.
So whereas the others are not. They're not meditational subjects. Everything else is not. Is not one of the 40 meditational subjects.
Right. The Quran again the some of the things that and penanyen da nangmitol chabe chagwa degi da ken chene de and ngazo jigwen bat doya me ba da digi parje shebe de ko thong su do sarwage da in so so lule chagwa roage digi and ne ba ya mandwe ya roage di gokyen ra bo kharichigo ra lule chagwa de roage kandes gokyen chigo re sarwage ne ba doya la roage
lule cha de ne ba gokyen de chigo 네 맞아디 니시다 룽줄 šan스
also just go really chakwa degi any kwekyen same de ne embal ya ke khar do chakwa resgen do ya la ya
la
really ya chakbe nimi samne ne embal ya roage ko da gar do chakwa res ne embal do ya da
da lu chakwa del shi de kyong yung go ro da kyong do ya je shi ne nyam스 len go ro nyam스 len ba la ne pe ne emba de nyam스 la na ma so to de ge pa me jo shi 네 뭐 상상이 길에 상어다나 그 지부저디야 야고미야 말아
릴 때문에 착바되게 네 엠벌로 고ген 치기 말해서 이제 착바되게 님이 삼고야지 냠내 샴바되게 야보면 됐은 거로
그래서 다네 엠벌 착 나와서 그 종시거라 다 샤바 나와 방고야라 삼어동 냠내 삼어동으로 냠내 삼어도 네 디키와래 네 엠벌고 상가승이 들이야 이제 야 공도데 네 도 말이죠
이 코란 치바디서 되게 류를 차베 착바되게 네 엠벌로에 게진 컨데 치고레스겐디 네 게진 치기 말을 숨게 되게 류를 제베 착바되게 네 엠벌로에 게진 치기 말을 숨게
Lül Shabe Chakwa de Lül
Nyenje
Shabe.
dige de sigro bagya da nyenje dige de ko da lüre chabe chakwa de ne mo re ge 지금 말해서 이네 디 chakwa de 님이 곰 과에 다 가르서는 신의 기야다 dige 들 고 게진 식으로 됐은 거로 게
Lül Shabe Chakwa de ne ma goya shigi jire. Chakwa yu shinje karshida Lül Tashe Boshe. Ne ma doasha ya pesigo ne me ko morashe. Chobo de so sheni nungo ro.
no so what Geshe says is that how attachment to the body might prevent us from going into solitude is that sometimes if we think too much attached to the body, then we feel going into solitude would be too difficult and we cannot handle that, right? And then we have all the excuses we make it, Then being in a solitude, as you said, we have to reflect on the faults of attachment to the body and relatives, because without dealing with them, there is no way to cultivate calm abiding and all of that, right? Yeah, thank you.
We have one more
Sure.
here and one more online,
Sure,
if that's
sure,
okay.
Sure.
Thank you. For myself, I was really moved to know my body will be gone one day. We have daily reminders of that, if not in the mirror, in our physicality. And in my opinion, to save oneself from the horror of knowing the body will rot, that stench, the foulness, is absolute motivation. First of all, you're humbled and humiliated and, by what we think of ourselves. And to me, that is instant, for now at least today, motivation.
So that's your observation, right? Sure, yeah. Quran the samla da tanda di nganzo lüliya chakwe nimi mongusung rovage and lüdi and tamya tapchu lüliya da ko shibe roller judo gure dene ko da ka so chimangye ba chagadu lab rovage dige nongone samla sta yu de kan moral chasha wena moral kelsen dige jik chöliya jukwa gi kulong rovage che dong dine yung du sa da di moral samju rovage di chiwa yo mardage.
There's a comment online. He says, this text seems to suggest that a monastic would need to leave the monastery in order to attain Shine. Could Geshe please comment on this?
Tanda de chunju nangi tanda geng deshe chun de jorwage. Dir samstan de kala yana ta kombal shube kindimba yorwage. Kindimba dige de shine dogo chuna rawage ya. Komba ne chilo chenje ne emba chilo china ma do shine peje duwe yosa ma de dine yi ba ina sage. Kombal tegen ta kindimba so wordage.
Gombal da de so sha lo jo yin de ko gombal de ni ko na de je.
Ma da shine du to goro kombe na de
Ni
ne.
ro to je. So sha de jen. Mi chen da ko joas de jen tu ra.
Ta me de gidi ya des de she gebres ma de ge tanda 근데 그말에 상승이 수저로 그냥 로바 딱사했던 거를 페레게 그거를 그냥 담아를 줍제 치고 신의 걸로
근데 유는 지금 말이다. 근데 그 소샤 코스보 돼서 유는 지금 말아 뭐지. 상승이 지는 지금 말이.
근데 그 아고 미나서 가슴 보이는 게 신의 룹션 되도 나올 때는 되도 말.
라.
아고 미나서 난 가고 싶은 데 여러 개 멜로비 리나를 주고 직장 이러다.
미나서 가서는 데 가서 시당 캠기 내가다 제 좋아도 강하게 발전을 먹어야 되겠어요.
So Geshe continues sometimes to challenge him, because he's saying that is it possible that monastic monks in monasteries could just stay in their own monk cell and develop Shine? But I said, how is that possibility? I just tried to challenge him, right? I said, because monasteries debate and that's very noisy and there's everything else going on. He said, yeah, if that's all the noise going on, it's not possible. But let's say you have a monk cell or a room, right? More a quiet place by yourself, nobody's disturbing you, then they could. Then I said, wouldn't that be true with the lay people, right? Lay people on the Malibu, I think alone by themselves doing something. Would that be possible? So actually, yeah, for the lay people, usually it's hard. Is lay people have a lot of relationships and responsibilities. That's the issue. And so it's very hard to find time and just do that. So I'm just translating exactly what Geshe said. Okay, so I think I'll look at the time. Maybe if I have a prayer request here, we'll continue next Sunday. In Sunday, again. Sunday, Cooper Mayor, secondly, again. So I have a prayer request for Cooper Mayer, deceased, and I'm sure we can think of many others we know of. And we will invoke the Buddha of Compassion, Avalokiteshvara, and recite the 6-syllable essence mantra and do the dedication. Okay? Chadong Golun Gyuben, Yewon Zon, Jendong, Gewa Sangbu, Sangye Dong, Kangla Kangdu, Tela, Jumba Jenre Sela, Chanze Lo, Om Mani Peme, Hum Mani Peme. Om Mani Peme. Om Mani Peme Hori, Gewa Di, Nyodo Da, Jere Sewan, Rowa Jijang Maluwa, De Sala, Gubara Sho. Page 3. Lord Yazu, Udon, Bevade, Kesam Pove, Judo, Memba Shin, Temba Jingla, Wando, Zhangyan Zhogun Jola, Sowan De, Mawa Dame, Kunyen Dongwa De, Kangli Zhongzo, Ninda Seja, Jamguen Jawa, Niwa Yapse Je, Shangzong Dingxi, Mawe Shiba, Tenzin Chewe, Jingbon Zebe Je, Shije, Nikun Changzhou Den. Long Dao Tamje Bebe Beiyuan Jin, Duja Gazu, Gundo, Shabdin, Tesang Guangda, Sheze, Zongbe Zi, Yongzo, Yure, Tube, Nyaki, Longri, Tiyen, Nubu, Bendenba, Tubden, Gangri, Dabo, Shabdin, Lona, Gomen, Zeba, Namda, Gun, Dendang, Rue, Pende, Tundro, Jumin, Chebe, Chinle, Je, Gesang, Duje, Zendo, Shabden, Shu, Jizhe, Lame, Tukje, Mulamda, Gesang, Duje, Dendam, Chodun, Dodo, Chidon, Dom, Chida, Memben, Dungun, Lundru, Shu, Ramjan, Shingen, Gombo, Seba, Me, Zodo, Namje, Keyun, Troma, Chojo, Zeye, Lazo, Tamje, Jin, Tazen, Mishi, Chogi, Ud, Tubden Jidang, Losang, Yawa Yi, Shizhuo, Denbang Zenbe, Beiyuan Je, Chadu Duje, Yongge, Yangdu Ninje, Ongbo, Sowa De, Jiden Sumgun, Chana, Bemen De, Denbe Zawa, Susho Tawa, Lambda, Sudi, Yangda, Lamba Yi, Losang, Yenden, Bedo, Tuzhong, Yazhen, Nongzin, Yangbe Xin, Samzhong, Namzhe, Sangzin, Junbe Zi, Gongzhong, Xila, Songzhong, Tenbe Ngada Shenpo Shabden Sho, Chebe Dongwa Kowa Bozo De, Zenbe Rulang Siwe Mo, Zenbe Denden, Firu Shenye Shenpo Shabden Sho, Kebe Langdo Kushe Zeta Je, Zenbe Chara Nyezo Rangza Shen, Sangbe Deja Rikon Yish, Shumde Shenye Shenpo Shabden Sho, Tesang Rola Siwe, Manjong Tam Zame Sijin Je, Labjin Jilin, Dendru Beshawa, Shabde Sho, Shozong Gyawa, Seje Shinla Zang, Tuden Damjin, Songmen Chinle Je, Daja Lasang Tabe, Shida Memben, Dungun Lundu, Sho, Changzhou, Simzhou, Rinpo Je, Maje Panan, Jeju, Jewa Nyingba, Meba Yang, Gongne Gongdo, Pewa Sho, Longni, Dawa, Rinpo Je, Maje, Jewa Nyingba, Meba Yang, Gongne Gongdo, Pewa Sho, Sa Shi, Beijing, Joshi, Medo, Zhang, Rira, Linxi, Ninde, Sangye Jindo, Mede, Bewa Yin, Rugun, Namda Xin, Cheba Sho, Kanri Rawe, Korwe, Shingam So, Pendang Dewa, Malu, Jum, Jere Sewa, Tenzin Dorjee, Shawen, Tenju ji yewa gundo yangda lamandan reme chöye bela falon jöje sada lamye yunde doje jange goba nyundo sho.